Not all of this has been bad. Not everything has gone to waste. And you'll be able to redeem moments that you've lost when you recognize that good things and blessings have actually come out of the hard times.
Welcome to the Healthy Skin Show with Jennifer Fugo, where we're flipping everything you've been told about your chronic skin issues upside down and connecting you with alternative solutions your dermatologist never told you about.
Welcome back to episode number 106 of the Healthy Skin Show. In today's episode, we're going to talk about a specific type of condition that can result in people who are eczema prone. But first, I want to take a listener question. You guys know that I love answering your questions. Today's question is from Roxanne.
Hello. I would like to know what kind of probiotics to take, the biggest range of probiotics to take after I do a cleanse. This would be very interesting for me. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Roxanne, for leaving me this question. Here's what I'll say about this. The type of probiotic that you choose is somewhat based on your own particular circumstance. So here's the thing. Ask yourself this. Are you pooping a healthy, solid poop 1 to 3 times a day? If you are, then I would say that something like Megaspore Biotic would be a great option. If not, and you're more on the diarrhea or looser side, something like Saccharomyces Bilardi may be helpful, especially if you're more on the diarrhea side, also called S. Bilardi. It can be incredibly helpful in solidifying stool and slowing down the transit time. It's best known for being used with traveler's diarrhea or Montezuma's revenge, if, say, you're traveling in a third world country, and as a more natural alternative to something like those anti-diarrheal medications. If you do have a diagnosis of IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, you definitely want to check with your doctor first before you start supplementing with Saccharomyces Bilardi. There sometimes can be antibodies present to the Saccharomyces species, and your doctor can guide you best around that. And you will note that the amount of organisms in S. Bilardi is significantly lower than a lot of the probiotics on the market, and that's actually a good thing. I typically will have clients start off with just taking 1 capsule a day and seeing if that helps firm things up. If you really have to go above 2 or 3 capsules a day, I would definitely suggest checking in with a practitioner to make sure that there's not something else going on causing these looser stools that needs to be addressed. I've previously talked about Megaspore Biotic on the show in other interviews. Feel free to check those out. I'll place them in the show notes for you. And if you'd like to test out Megaspore Biotic, I'll put my link in the show notes so that it's easy for you to go in and see if it's a good fit for you. But know that if you do decide to start it, it is important to go low and slow, opening the capsule and starting at 1/4 capsule a day for a number of days before slowly jumping up in 1/4 capsule increments, because sometimes people can find that they react a bit to Megaspore Biotic, especially if they've got more dysbiosis in the gut. And I've also got some great feedback from clients and from listeners who've used it topically and found that it's helped. I'll leave all of that information in the show notes for you to check out. The only other thing that I would say about probiotics is that everyone thinks more is better. And that's not necessarily the case. In fact, you can over-supplement with probiotics. So some of those 50 billion CFUs or 100 billion CFU formulas could be overkill, especially if you've got SIBO-like symptoms or you're just taking way too much. I generally recommend, if you don't know what's going on with your gut and you're not working with a nutritionist or a doctor or someone who can help support you around this, stick with somewhere between the 10 to 15 billion CFU range. Try to find something that's pretty broad spectrum as well. That way you're getting a bunch of different organisms in that particular formula. And like I said, S. Bilardi may be appropriate for you if you've got more diarrheal or looser stool issues. And then, the other option, which is one of my go-tos, is Megaspore Biotic. All of those resources, again, will be in the show notes over at skinterrupt.com/106. And if you've got a question you would love to ask, head on over to healthyskinshow.com. Scroll down, you'll see the little blue microphone. There you can click and leave us a voicemail. That way we can incorporate your questions into the show. With that said, let's dive into today's conversation with my friend, Abby Lai. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Today, I am joined by a good friend. Her name is Abby Lai. Some of you may have come across her on Instagram. We met, I don't know, a year or so ago, and we've been on each other's podcasts. She's got a great one, by the way, that you should check out. As I said, Abby Lai is a registered holistic nutritionist, and she's the founder of Eczema Conquerors. It's a website that was voted one of the top 20 eczema blogs to follow in 2018. She's also the creator of the Eczema Podcast. As I said, it's a tremendous resource and you should check it out. And I'll put a link underneath this video so it's easy for you to find. Her mission is to help as many people as possible overcome eczema by working with clients worldwide and providing natural eczema remedies through eBooks, videos, and articles. She's also the creator of the Skin Conqueror line, and you can follow her over on eczemaconquerors.com. Abby, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Jen. Thanks so much for having me today.
So why don't you fill everybody in, because you're not just a nutritionist, like you're literally an eczema warrior yourself. So when did eczema appear in your life?
So I always had it when I was young. I had it since I was born. It was never bad. It was always just mild and everything was okay. Then when I moved to Hong Kong when I was really young as a teenager. And then after my first boyfriend broke up with me, that's actually when it became really, really severe. So I know that my eczema is really tied to a lot of, emotions and stress and just trauma that's happened in my life as well that I've had to dig really deep into. And the funny thing is, whenever I came to Canada, because that's where I was born, so whenever I visited Canada during the summers, my skin would just clear up all on its own. And then this happened for like years and years. And then when I went to university, everything was okay. And I was able to, live with clear skin again, which was great. But yeah, when I started dating my boyfriend at that time, who is now my husband, my skin flared up severely, like really, really badly shortly after again. And it's just so interesting how sometimes the condition can be really tied to, relationships and even like emotions and, like I mentioned before, trauma as well. So yeah, things they were so bad and I was working full time. I couldn't walk properly, couldn't move properly, couldn't shower properly. Sleeping was hard and it was hard to look at my face. I felt like I was looking at someone I couldn't recognize. I felt like sometimes I was looking at a monster because I had so much redness, I had rashes. Everything was peeling. I tried to cover it up with foundation and I couldn't cover it up. And everyone just noticed it at work. And, one day, one of the managers, she was so nice. She just said to me, why don't you take unlimited work from home days or unlimited sick days? I just want to really be able to help you get better. So that really helped so much. And, it was around that time that one of my friends also had mild to moderate eczema. So she said to me, I've heard that doing an elimination diet would really, really help your skin. Like, would you be interested in doing this together? And I thought she was crazy because at that time, nothing in my head, made sense that diet would really help my skin. So I was going through such a hard time and, I was like, what is there to lose? So we did this elimination diet together and my skin just went crazy. It went so bad. Like within 2 months, it was like the worst it had ever been. I was just super scared at everything that was happening. I didn't understand what was going on. And, my husband said, just hang in there. Maybe like it's still getting better. Like we'll still see. And the naturopath that I was seeing at that time, he said, it can get worse before it gets better. So I hung on to that, even though I was still a bit skeptical. And long story short, after that 2 months, like my skin would just heal so fast. I felt like during that 2 months, it's like all the toxins coming out, like too much for me to handle. And then after the 2 months, like my skin was just healing at such a rapid rate. Like even though I slept, there are days I only slept 3 hours or 4 hours or 5 hours a night, but my skin was just healing so fast. And yeah, that's what made me inspired to become a nutritionist after. And just help people with skin problems too.
Yeah. And so one of the most interesting things, I mean, it's interesting, and yet for you, living it is not interesting, I guess, per se. It's really uncomfortable, is that you seem to have a flare after, was it during or after you had your son?
It was after.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So during pregnancy, my skin was great. I was, things were good. My skin was not too bad. People said like I had the pregnancy glow with my skin. So I was happy about that. And 1 week before giving birth, my skin started getting like really, really dry again and like a bit flaky. And I just remember like 1 week before giving birth, like everything was like so itchy and like flaky because it was so dry. And then, after that, like my skin just like after giving birth, like it slowly kept like declining and declining more and more until the point where it was just, it was incredibly like scary and traumatic, everything I went through. I also was on 2 rounds of antibiotics for, once I think was for, UTI, and another one was because I got a nail infection from scratching so much. And I had tried natural methods, but it wasn't strong enough at that point. And there was a lot of stuff I couldn't take because I was breastfeeding. But the doctors gave me like some breastfeeding safe, antibiotics to take. But my skin would just flare so much to the antibiotics and react so much. One day I went to, this 7-year-old saw me and she said, "What's wrong with your face? It looks so bad. It looks really, really bad." And then like it was full of rashes, and my son had a rash too because the antibiotics flared up his skin too because I was breastfeeding. So, the little girl was like, "The rash, your son has that exact same rash." And then, but his was nowhere near as bad as mine. And so for a long time, like my skin after birth was just horrible and I couldn't sleep properly.
You even talked about how just the act of wearing pants was really difficult, like wearing clothes was hard.
That was tough. Like there were times it would take me like over 30 minutes just to put on a pair of pants. And it was so hard even just to like leave the house. And like even picking up my son from daycare was like really, really difficult. The hardest part was, one of the hardest parts was wearing clothes because it just made me feel so uncomfortable. And after showering, like it would take me hours just to dry off because like I had to put on a lot of oil, and I would put on castor oil because it's really thick, but it was the only thing that would help my skin stay moisturized. So yeah, everything was like a big challenge. And I remember saying to my husband, like, I feel like I can barely survive. And he was telling me that, he felt the same way. Like he was like, I feel like I can barely survive too, but not because of like the same thing you're going through, but because I wasn't able to take care of my son that much. So my husband had to take care of my son and do like a lot of the chores because I couldn't do it too. So it was a really, really hard time for sure.
And so it was interesting. Recently on your Instagram feed, you mentioned a specific type of, was it an infection that can happen as a result of eczema? I thought might be just an interesting little tidbit to share.
Yeah.
Can't hurt.
So during my pregnancy, for the first time, I got Eczema Herpeticum, and I had never had it before. I didn't know what it was. I saw different doctors, like 2 to 3 different doctors, and they had no idea what it was too. One thought it was folliculitis, and then another doctor thought I had used a product that had just caused a reaction on my face. And the scary thing about this is like I found that not a lot of doctors know about this. The the scary part about eczema herpeticum is that it spreads really, really fast. And it's herpes simplex virus. So it's related to the same family as like cold sores, like shingles, things like
chickenpox. Yeah.
So the dangerous part about eczema herpeticum is that, well, for me, I had it on my face. So it spreads really, really fast. And I read somewhere where it says that usually the first time is like the worst time. And then the other times, like they won't be as bad. But I'm sure there are exceptions to this. Like I've heard people who have had it really bad. Some have been hospitalized because of this. And the dangerous thing about eczema herpeticum is that it can actually go into your lungs, and it can even go into your eyes because it can cause blindness. So I've actually had to get my eyes checked out just to make sure I didn't have any in it. And then I've read somewhere that it can also cause meningitis, but I still have to confirm that one. But yeah, it spreads fast, and that's why a lot of people find it really scary. And not a lot of doctors recognize it. I remember going to another doctor, asking them for like a topical thing to put on it. And, they said that they can give it to me, but I need to take full responsibility for it because they don't know this condition and they're not familiar with how to treat it. And it wasn't until my dermatologist, that I went to see a dermatologist during my pregnancy, that they immediately recognized what it was. So yeah, it's interesting, interesting and sad that, not a lot of people will recognize what it is.
Yeah. And what were some of the symptoms? You said it just looked like little dots all over the face?
Yeah. So while I had the eczema herpeticum, it looks like little dots, like little blisters, and it's like itchy and uncomfortable. Imagine like a lot of cold sores like all over your face. I know that's like not a fun thing. But yeah, I remember like emailing Dr. Leo, who I know you've had on the podcast. I emailed him and told him like, I found out like I have this, like what do I do about it? And he was great. He gave me good tips. He suggested using like calamine lotion to calm it down. But then doctors, a lot of times, they also recommend antivirals and antibiotics and like topical stuff too. So there's always that option. And I am always about the natural remedies. So for this one though, it's like one of the more risky ones. So I would highly consult like whoever's going through this to talk to your doctor about it, if you should take medications or not, and also consult with your holistic practitioner or naturopath. But definitely consult with your doctor first.
Yeah. Well, especially that risk of going ending up with eye issues. I mean, your eyes are basically it's like an external portion of your brain. And unfortunately, while we would love to think we can fix all these things in the body, I just know because my dad's an ophthalmologist and an eye surgeon, that there are things with the eyes that we cannot always fix. So it is important to be careful when it's something that affects your eyes.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And, I remember like there was one girl, I think she had it really, really bad. It kept getting worse. And she was just consulting with like a health coach. So I would just recommend health coaches are not, they're not qualified.
Yeah. And they're not medical practitioners. So,
and you don't know like how bad it can get. So this is definitely something to be aware of and really to work with your doctor.
Abby, how long did it take you to go through that? Because obviously something like shingles, it depends on when you catch it. Just out of curiosity, if anybody does end up with this or if they're maybe in the middle of it, did it take a couple of weeks to go away once you started treating it or?
Yeah, so I actually got eczema herpeticum last week. So I got it last week because I had the flu. So I was down with the flu like really, really badly. And I usually get it when my immune system is low or either I have a severe lack of sleep, which is common, for viral infections. You usually catch it when your immune system is low. So I had it last week. So the day that, I was supposed to do this interview with you last week, but that morning I woke up with a herpeticum and my left eye was swollen because I had like herpeticum on my left eyelid. I still have scarring here actually. So I have scarring here from the herpeticum. So I think everyone is different. I spoke with someone who said that theirs lasts for 2 weeks, that they take, strong antivirals in order for it to calm down. If they don't, they were telling me that if they don't take the strong antivirals, it only lasts like a week or so. But for me, mine personally lasts about a week. And I do strongly recommend an antiviral protocol as well. Like, for example, lysine, like that's really important, and that will really help too. And even like high doses of vitamin C to boost the immune system. So work with your naturopath for like the antiviral protocol, but also speak with your doctor if you're going through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned, you've had a long history in dealing with eczema and living with eczema and ups and downs with it. And now you do nutrition. So do you have maybe, 4 or 5 favorite foods that you find that you're like, yeah, you can add these to your diet, because I know you have a very specific way that you address eczema. Are there any favorite foods that maybe people should consider adding to their diet if they haven't yet?
Yeah, there's so many. It's really hard. I know, I'm sure you and I both, we have a lot of favorite foods. I really recommend, there's so many that we could go into, but I really recommend, an anti-inflammatory diet. So high in vegetables and good fruits, and lots of greens. Like foundation, they usually say like the green hue will bring down the redness. So just similar to that, in vegetables, like green vegetables, it'll really, really help with bringing down the inflammation and just helping the skin as well. But yeah, even things like turmeric, it really has that strong anti-inflammatory property. And that can be found not only in foods, but also in supplements as well.
Yeah, and you can actually add that to so much. And it doesn't necessarily, I found at least, like if I cook rice or something, I'll add some to vegetables or to like a rice or something. And it doesn't necessarily mean for anybody who hasn't tried it that you're going to end up with a really strong flavor. I think people think turmeric is like, it's going to taste like curry. And if they're not comfortable with exploring ethnic cuisine, they're worried about what it'll taste like. But I don't find that turmeric really has a super strong flavor. So it's something that you can easily add to like protein shakes or pretty much anything.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a wide range of uses that can be used for it, which is really, really great.
Yeah. And I have one last question for you. If you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, like you wish you knew this before, any thoughts on what that might be?
I've actually asked myself this before, and I feel like when I look back, like I feel like I did the best I could. Like I tried so many things, like even after giving birth and during my pregnancy, I tried so many different modalities. I've even looked into things like, parasites, whether my body had like low grade infections, thyroid, because that was always something that I was struggling with. So I think if it was one thing that I would say to myself, it would be not to be so hard on myself and to forgive myself for everything that I've gone through, and to not feel bad and to not punish myself in my mind for not healing more, for not doing better. I would just tell myself that, I think that I deserve a bit more love and grace, especially for everyone out there and whoever's listening. I know that it's not easy, and it's so easy to punish yourself and say that you're not doing enough or that you're not good enough if you're going through this. And I know a lot of us, we also feel like we're not beautiful enough sometimes when our face has a lot of scarring or eczema patches. So I just want to say that, if one piece of advice that I would give myself and also give to your listeners out there is just to have more grace for yourself and to forgive yourself if you're going through this and to love yourself through the process. I think that we learn a lot through the process. I am really I guess I am really upset that I have had to go through so much, after giving birth. I look at other people who have had eczema and I'm like, they're able to be okay. Like, they have sleepless nights, but their skin looks great. Like, how come I've had to suffer so much compared to other people? So yeah, I think just having that love for yourself and just understanding that good things can come out of hard times, and that your test can become your testimony. And that, I've cried so many sleepless nights after giving birth, not only because I couldn't really help my son and be there for him as much as I wanted. I feel like there's been a lot of stolen moments that I wish I could be there for. But, a lot of blessings have come out of this. For example, I've learned so much more about how to help people through this. I've learned how to love my body more and have grace on my body. I've learned how to have compassion on other people more. So the advice that I would give people is to list out the good things that have come out of this. And you'll remember and you'll know that, not all of this has been bad. And not all of this has been, not everything has gone to waste. And you'll be able to redeem moments that you've lost when you recognize that good things and blessings have actually come out of the hard times.
Yeah. And I also think too, as you're saying all of this, which is it's such a powerful testimony to somebody who you keep trying, and I think that's what I hear as well, is that you've kept trying despite maybe if things didn't work or you hit a wall someplace or something came back, you kept going. Despite all of that, you never threw in the towel. And that is also a very powerful reminder that you can't just say, oh, I tried everything, even though maybe too, that's also a good reminder is that even if you've gone the dermatology route and you've tried everything, there are other options, right? We can try other things. You just have to keep an open mind and keep on learning. And I think that's the one thing that I learned when I was on the verge of being like, why is this happening to me? Am I being punished? Like, did somebody put the evil eye on me? I realized that was an invitation to say, maybe I need to look at this from a different way, and I need to get help in a different way that isn't a normal standard way. And look at you. I mean, you've like really been able to change people's lives, and it's amazing. I love watching what you do, what you share, especially on Instagram, and your podcast is just a phenomenal resource for everybody who's tuning in. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing everything, not just your story, but all of these personal details about your journey that a lot of people would rather just hide and not talk about. And it takes a lot of courage and boldness, and I think grace as well, to be willing to share the moments that aren't, like you said, they're not as beautiful and perfect, and why me? Why is this happening to me? But you're willing to do that, and it's really inspiring.
Thank you, Jen. That really means so much to me.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that we're able to do this together and help people find their way forward. So for everybody listening, again, Abby's website is eczemaconquerors.com. She's got a great shop with products. She's got the Skin Conqueror line you can check out, and the Eczema Podcast. I'm going to put all of her links beneath this, as well as in any show notes that we share with you guys. So Abby, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
And thank you, Jen, for everything that you're doing for the eczema community, and just, doing all these interviews, because it just reminds all of us, conquerors and warriors out there that, we can keep going, and that this illness will not defeat us, but that we will rise above it and be able to conquer it. So thank you again for doing this.
I am so deeply appreciative for Abby's vulnerability. Most people have never heard of Eczema Herpeticum. It's really interesting to listen to her experience. That way, if you feel like you're experiencing this, you want to get to your doctor as soon as possible. All of Abby's links are over in the show notes at skinterrupt.com podcast.com/106, along with all of the other resources from our listener question earlier in the show. And you know what to do. Head on over to your podcast platform of choice, and I would love it so much if you could rate, review, and then hit the subscribe button. That way, the next show lands on your mobile device of choice without you having to do a thing. And could you imagine how grateful you would be if someone shared this episode with you, especially if you ended up experiencing what Abby has discussed? I urge you, share this with our community. Let's raise awareness. That way, no one ends up with some really serious long-term permanent side effects because they didn't know what they were dealing with. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next episode.